In painting, color has the power to evoke an immediate emotional response, but value is what sets the mood and provides shape or form. For example, let's take this apple. If we set it down on a table, we are immediately confronted with the fact that this apple is red. But when we look more closely, we notice that there are different shades of red and other colors. Where the light is hitting the apple, the reds are lighter and have higher value than the areas receiving less light, like the back of the apple where the values are lower. If we were to paint this apple, we would blend the lighter colors here with the darker colors over here, and this would be called making a tonal progression. And this is what makes the apple look three-dimensional and realistic. If we just used one value, like a medium red color throughout, the apple would look flatter and more cartoonish. So how do we identify what these colors are and then make sure that their values are accurate? If we have the object in front of us, we can use a value finder like this one, along with a paint fan deck, and then mix our colors to match. If we're working from reference photos like I am in this painting, we can use the eyedropper tool in Photoshop or a similar program to pick out the colors that we want to use. Before we do that though, let's pause and really look at this image. What stands out to you? When I first looked at this image, it felt like my eyes were playing tricks on me. Right away, I was struck by the rich, bright yellow of the leaves in the middle, but it took me a full half hour to figure out that the leaves stood out because the branches in the trees are mostly darker than the leaves, as well as lower chroma or intensity. For the initial layer, I'm going to keep it simple and select 3 colors for the trees. A light, a medium, and a dark brown, along with a bright yellow and a deep yellow for the leaves. When I pull up a digital version of the value finder, I can readily determine the approximate value for each of these colors. From here, I can then go to my palette and mix the corresponding colors, keeping my physical value finder and paint fan deck handy. By the way, something I've discovered, which others have discovered long before me, is that a white palette makes it harder to determine values because it makes colors seem darker than they really are. The palette that I'm using now is called New Wave Posh Neutral Gray Glass Palette. It measures 12 by 16 inches and it fits perfectly inside the Masterson Stay Wet palette seal. The seal is great because it prevents my paint from drying between painting sessions. I also like the depth of it. It's about twice as deep as my old palette, which means I can mix up a lot more paint and I don't have to worry about it sticking to the lid. I've added links to this video's description if you'd like to check out either one. Let's revisit my painting for a moment. So the background leaves are done and I've done the first layer of the trees, but I haven't done the branches. My next step is actually to do the branches, and then once that dries, I'll put another layer of leaves in front. That layer of leaves in front is going to be the top layer of paint, which will be the first thing that viewers see when they look at this painting. And so what I'm going to do, at least my thought, to bring that mesmerizing quality of those bright yellow leaves, is to add some more of them into the top third of the painting and then bring some of those dark yellow leaves down into the middle third of the painting. So you can kind of get the sense that these leaves are backlit. Here's how my painting looks in its current state next to the reference photo. I'm going to tone down the contrast in my painting, but I have a feeling it's going to end up with a little more contrast than the reference photo. I'm sharing my painting as an example because training your eye takes time, and you also have to take your own personal style into account. Like I've always been attracted to high contrast or bold color combinations side by side. You might hear paintings described as high-key, painted with lighter colors, like many of the Impressionist paintings, or low-key, painted with darker colors, like many of the Dutch Golden Age paintings. You might notice as you look at paintings that you have a different emotional response depending on the colors and values. So paintings like Monet's might inspire a feeling of openness or tranquility, while a Rembrandt portrait with darker colors may bring a sense of contemplation or heaviness. I think it's worthwhile to notice what value range or ranges resonate with you, lighter, darker, in the middle, and then be able to select corresponding hues. Another thing to consider while you're painting is swapping colors that have the same value. In the Oil Painter's Color Handbook, author Todd Casey suggests that color sits on top of value. He thinks that if you nail the values in a painting, you can put nearly any color on top of the value and it will still work. We can see how this is true in historical paintings like those by Van Gogh and Klimt. Take a look at this Van Gogh self-portrait, for example. He's putting red next to green in his jacket, but because the values are so similar, we know what he's trying to paint. And in this Klimt painting, if we zoom in on the girl's face, we can see so many colors: purple, blue, pink, yellow, green. If we put the image in grayscale though, it probably doesn't look too much different than how a normal portrait would look if it was painted with classic flesh tone colors. One could argue that Klimt's use of color actually enhances the liveliness of his portrait and reflects his own personal style. Something else that can be helpful while you're painting to understand the relationship between value and color is to simplify compositions into shapes and values prior to painting in color. What you're looking at here is a painting and a value study by watercolorist Andy Evanson. By simplifying complex scenes into shapes and values, Andy is able to make more dramatic compositions and then apply color in a thoughtful way. Similarly, artists, typically oil painters, will use the grisaille technique to create a monochromatic underpainting and then layer colors or a series of glazes on top. Justin Brooks, the artist of this piece, said that he used a combination of sap green, phthalo blue, French ultramarine blue, ivory black, and different whites to create this underpainting. He plans to add layers of glazes on top to colorize everything later. Here's a great example of the stages of the grisaille technique from artist Matt Harvey. On the left is the grisaille, in the middle is after one glaze, and on the right is after 5 layers of glazing. Matt says that for him, the glazing process is the same with each layer, and he's able to steadily refine the colors each time. In sum, value is at least as important as color is to paintings. Value not only creates a sense of depth and dimension, it guides the viewer's eye to areas of contrast because it helps certain elements stand out. While colors add intensity and emotional impact, value is essential for structure, clarity, and the overall effectiveness of a painting. It's the foundation for everything. But both elements are working together to enhance the visual experience for both you as the artist and the viewer. Give this video a like if you found it helpful, and definitely check out the artists that I mentioned. I've added links in the video's description to Andy Evanson, Justin Brooks, and Matt Harvey. They're all super talented. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.